Welcome to the Brown Bag Business Chat. This week we have Tess Wittler joining us again for Tess Wittler Content Marketing. Tess, tell us a little bit about what you do and who you do it for.
Hey Heather, thanks for having me. I am a content marketer and I specialize in helping businesses tell their stories through content. So what that looks like is it can be through case studies or white papers, newsletters, blog articles, social media, all of those things that help tell their story and help illustrate what differentiates them from their competition. And who I do it for, mostly contractors. So both residential and commercial contractors, especially contractors like painters, landscapers, roofers, those types of things, is kind of where I've fallen into as far as content marketing is concerned.
And when we talk about content marketing, that's a really big term that I think a lot of people have heard, but maybe they don't really know what it means. So can you break down and just tell us from your viewpoint, what is content marketing?
Sure, that is a huge term, actually. So content marketing is basically any information that you are sharing with your audience. So for instance, this Google Hangout, this chat is content marketing. It's video, podcasts, written, whether it's online or whether it's in print, that's all content. Your brochures, your white papers, your newsletters, blog articles, your tweets on Twitter and your pins on Pinterest, all of that stuff is content marketing. And really the big thing is to try to find what is the ideal content for a specific client. Your website is also huge content. It's just full of information for your audience. So all of those things go into making the big broad term of content marketing.
And why is it that it's such a well-known term? What makes it so important or so beneficial that everybody kind of has heard of it? There's a million different service providers out there offering help with content marketing. What makes it such a big thing in terms of a portion of your marketing mix?
Sure. So, back, maybe even 10 years ago, we had this thing called push marketing, so and interruptive marketing. So that was the traditional marketing that most of us grew up with. So you had TV advertisements, radio advertisements, billboards, newspapers, magazines, all of those things went into your marketing mix. And as technology changed and as our lifestyle changed, marketing had to as well. So instead of listening to radio, we now have satellite radio or Spotify radio or something like that, where there's not as many advertising opportunities. With television, you have, besides cable, you have, Netflix, and you have Dish and DirecTV, and you have homes that only do Amazon Prime. You have all kinds of different things happening with traditional advertising. And so what makes content marketing so interesting is that the goal of content marketing should be to make sure that you're being helpful, useful, educational for your audience. So instead of pushing people towards, and interrupting their lives, you actually want to pull people in to read or to view whatever it is that you have and be helpful in those messages, as opposed to just being intrusive.
And before we get too much further, I want to remind everyone we do have the Q&A open, so you should be able to ask questions right here on the Google Hangout. If you're just kind of got us on in the background and you're not actively in this window, you can also follow along on Twitter and send us questions or feedback with the hashtag BBBchat. So we'll be watching that. We'll be watching the Q&A. So as you have questions, please send those in so we can be sure and talk about those as well beyond just what I want to talk about. So going back to kind of what is content marketing, why do we want to do it? And you gave a few examples of some types of content marketing, but can we talk a little bit about some stories just to really help paint the picture of what it is and what it can do for a business. Can you give us some stories maybe of where you've seen content marketing be really successful, especially for a smaller business? I'm not as concerned with people who have whole teams to manage it for them, but for smaller businesses, where have you seen this really make a difference in their business, really help them generate more leads or do something impactful?
Sure, sure. So, like Heather and I were talking about, content marketing is this huge, general term for so many different things. And I'll give an example of a remodeler up in the Toronto area that's one of my clients who 2 years ago he decided to invest in heavily on content marketing. He started with his website, and he redid his website to make it more attractive, to have more good information on there. And then once he had his website, which is the hub of everything that you do online, ready to go, then he worked on his blog and his email newsletter. And with regards to his blog, the reason why he wanted to do that is because he wanted to continually and regularly publish new information onto his website. And that's great for SEO purposes, which I know you went over a couple weeks ago with Pam. And it also is great for sharing on social media as well, to be able to push out some fresh, valuable content and then attract those people to come back to their blog to read it a little bit further. So, and then when I came into the mix, he wanted to start an email newsletter campaign because he had only about 150 or 200 past clients and prospects, very small business, but he wasn't keeping in touch with them on a regular basis. So we developed a strategy where every other month we did an email newsletter, and primarily the bulk of the newsletter was on a project that he had just completed, so a kitchen reno or a bathroom renovation. Sometimes he talks about what is design build, and so we've written on different topics. And what that does is he pushes out that newsletter, and he's gotten immediate response from customers who were thinking about a project that he didn't even realize they were thinking about a project, and they contacted them and they said, hey, we want to talk to you about doing our bathroom remodel project, or we want to add in Toronto, most everything's on one story, so they want to add a second story, or they want to refinish their basement. And he's really been able to tap into those existing customers and get them off the fence and moving their projects forward to keep his pipeline open. So what he started out with was basically, a 1 or 2 month pipeline for business. Now he's up to sometimes 4, 5, even 6 months, where he's talking to clients who want to start their project next spring or even next summer. And that's really, it's on a very small scale. Most small businesses can easily do an email newsletter, and that's one of the ways to do that, is just to keep in touch with past prospects and kind of it's an easy way to understand where their mind is, so that that if they have a project in mind, you can at least keep that conversation going.
Right. And talking about email, when you say that it's easy for a small business to do it, I kind of internally flinch, because I picture all of the things that you and I have both seen clients do that are not so great or not so intelligent. So what are some quick things before we move off of email marketing that you can tell people about what to do, what not to do, kind of the quick, bulleted list of how to successfully manage an email newsletter campaign without looking like a horrible person?
Okay. So there's a lot of great services out there. The number one not to do thing is to generate your email through your Outlook or your Yahoo or your Gmail accounts. You can't send something directly to a massive list through those accounts. You're going to get flagged as spam. So you need to go to MailChimp. I love MailChimp because it's free to start out. Constant Contact, iContact. There's a lot of really low-cost services out there. The second thing you need to do is you can't just automatically enroll people into your email newsletter campaign. That's also spam. You need to ask their permission, And one of the ways you can do that is if they've already given you their email address and you've already communicated them with email, that's a way of asking permission, so you can add them to your list. And I won't get into a lot of issues, but you can't just automatically just take people from your Google account or your Outlook account and just export them and then import them into MailChimp, for instance. There's a lot of steps you need to do in the meantime. But I think with going back to content marketing, probably the biggest thing that we need to keep in mind is you just need to commit to do it on a regular basis, and don't make it this massive thing. Start small and work your way up. You know, you don't need to have a newsletter that has 10 articles. You can start with just one article and a real nice warm welcome message. For my clients, the formula that I use with almost all of my clients is we have a welcome message, which is just a friendly hello, maybe some personal things that are happening if they've been working with a charity, or if there's something that's happening locally. We incorporate that into that opening welcome message. And then we have our project spotlight, which is where we talk about a project, the challenges, and then how happy the homeowner was upon completion. And then I do a home tip. So that's usually something seasonal. So if it's winter in your area, then you may want to talk about some of the things that are going around the house that you need to be mindful of in the winter time. And it's that very simple formula that seems to work with all of my clients. And I'm sure that with other businesses you can do the same thing: a welcome, the feature article, and then some type of tip, business tip, or whatever the tip may be. So when I said it was easy, I apologize for making you flinch. What I meant was it's very low cost entry, and then it's just a matter of committing the time. Some people or some businesses want to do it on a weekly basis or on a bi-weekly basis, and I always say think long term. Start out maybe doing it once a month or once every 2 months, and then if you can handle that, then increase your frequency to see how your audience reacts. But you know, don't go jumping in there all at once and think that you can do all of these things at once, because it does take some time and it does take a little bit of learning curve till you get it right as well.
And I want to ask a couple of follow-up questions to that based on two things you said. So first of all, the frequency. How do you know that you're sending at the right frequency for your audience, though? So let's say I can handle sending an email every week. Is it always appropriate to do that?
It really depends upon the industry. And for instance, if you're an entrepreneur like me, my audience can handle getting emails a little bit more often. And then if you're a contractor or a manufacturer, it might be a little bit less often. So that's one thing. But I think, honestly, you have to go into your analytics of the program that you're using, MailChimp or Constant Contact or one of those, Aweber, and you have to just look to see what the pushback is. If your open rate is dropping significantly and people are unsubscribing, they're telling you that something isn't quite right. Either your information isn't helpful or you're contacting them too frequently. The other thing that I always like to recommend is just ask your audience how often they want to receive. You know, after you get established a little bit, ask them, you know, would you prefer, and do a quick survey, would you prefer it monthly, bi-weekly, weekly? And they'll tell you. In the instance of the contractor from Toronto that I just mentioned, that was one of his big concerns, is his list was actually emailing him and saying, we haven't heard from you in a while, how often do you publish this? So he actually told them how often they published, and now reminds them in every single newsletter that this newsletter is published every other month. So that way people, that's a good sign when people are looking forward to it and saying, you know, we want to hear from you more often. So it's really doing a lot of research with your analytics a little bit, and then just the gut check, asking maybe someone like myself or you or someone else in their same industry how often they publish, and starting there and then tweaking it to what your audience seems to be telling you.
That definitely is a good way to start with that. And I another thing that I would add into that, especially for people kind of outside of that contractor niche, is look at your audience's buying cycles. You know, how often are they purchasing and how often are they using your product or service? And try to align yourself with that. So like you and me, people that we work with, we're involved in their business from a day-to-day basis. So like you said, we can kind of get away with emailing a little bit more often. People like to receive that information more often. Whereas if you're a manufacturer and people are really only purchasing your widgets once every couple of years and they're being used very sporadically in their business, then you probably don't want to be emailing them every single week because you are not top of mind. You're not actually helping them in their business by sending them your promotional material, unless you've got content that is just really great education or some other kind of useful thing for them. Which leads me into the second question, which is kind of going back to your formula. What should that balance be between promoting, showing off your own work, talking about your specials, things that you have going on in your business, versus actually providing some really good value through some sort of education or information that you're giving away in your newsletter or really any of your content marketing? What's the kind of give and take there?
So that's actually a really good question because I see a lot of lack of a better term, mistakes being made with this, especially on social media. Here's the thing: if you walk into a room and all you do is talk about yourself nonstop, you're going to turn people off, and you're not going to build those relationships. So whether it's your email newsletter or social media or your blogs or anything else that you're doing when it comes to online marketing, you want to be more helpful than talking about yourself. So the rule I use is an 80-20 split. So 80% of the time you're just being helpful. You're sharing content. You're sharing useful information. You're sharing other people's content as well. Even in your email newsletter, there's oftentimes when I'll refer them to another resource that isn't me because it's good information. And then 20% of the time it can be about you, about promoting your sales, reminding people about the services that you provide or the sales that the products that you offer. But you really need to be much more mindful of being helpful in building those relationships 80% of the time, and then the other 20% can be about sales.
And I would add, too, not to wait too long to throw in that 20% that is about sales, because people will forget that you're a business and that you're there to make money. And if you wait so long and you give and give and give and give and give, and then eventually you ask for some sort of sale or you ask for the customer to do something that results in a transaction, it can actually be really offensive to them because they've forgotten that they signed up for your content or they started following you because you were a business that they were interested in maybe working with, and now all of a sudden you're this source of information that's turning around and saying, hey, give me some money. It would be like, I don't know, if Wikipedia all of a sudden started trying to sell us something. We would probably be really offended by that. I know a lot of people were even offended when they were running their campaign funding. I guess that was about 1.5 years ago. They were, asking for donations before you could go through and actually read their content. And people were offended by that because they forget that this is an organization that, Wikipedia is only making enough to continue running. But when it's a business, that they're not just doing this because they're nice people. They're doing it because they want to sell you something eventually. So don't wait so long to put that sale in there, to put some sort of offer into your mix that you're actually offending the audience that you've built. I think is another important part of that.
Right, and I would add on to that too, going back to the email newsletter as an example. I often will write for my clients what I call project spotlights, where we take one of their projects, a kitchen reno or an addition or something like that, and we talk about it. And often they want to focus on their sweet spots, but there are some other really good things that they do for their clients that people forget about. So, for instance, if I'm working with a contractor who is primarily known for kitchen remodeling, People will remodel their kitchen with them and then totally forget that they also do additions, they also do outdoor living areas, and that sort of thing. So the Project Spotlight is a nice, gentle reminder of other projects that they do. And then, of course, at the bottom of the article, you always ask for a call to action. Contact us if you are thinking about doing an outdoor landscaping project, this summer. Give us a call. If if you need more room and want to refinish your basement, please, give us a call, contact us, that type of thing. So it's always that gentle nudge, but it's done in such a way that it's much easier to digest, because it's a story, it's an article, it's not a pushy sales piece. And I think that's what really differentiates content marketing from traditional marketing. Is it's reads more like an article. It's more fun to read. It's more inspirational to read. It's educational. And traditional marketing was definitely in your face, pushy. Call now. In the next 10 minutes, you'll get something for free type of thing. So I think that would be another, just to add on to what we were talking about with that gentle nudge of showcasing what you can do in that 20% without actually it being so offensive as it was years ago.
There's an episode of Mad Men that I just rewatched recently where I can't remember what the title of it is, but it's just after they've merged with the other marketing agency, and somebody brings in this doctor that basically gets them all really messed up on some kind of drugs, and they're all crazy, running around trying to come up with this pitch for Chevy. And Dawn has this breakthrough moment of, what if instead of breaking up the entertainment with ads, the ads actually become the entertainment? Mm-hmm. People actually want to participate in and watch the ad, which is really essentially describing what content marketing is. We're creating content that's so good and valuable or interesting that people want to consume it, even though it's a form of marketing.
Absolutely. Perfect example.
So with the time we have left, let's talk a little bit. I think hopefully people get a really good understanding now of what it is and how you can do it. And we've certainly got some more resources on our site, and I'm sure Tess does as well, for the blogging and social media side of it. We talk really heavily on email marketing. But how can a small business, somebody that doesn't have someone who's dedicated to doing content marketing, how can they approach this in a reasonable way that's actually going to be sustainable in their business?
So I think the first thing they need to do is they need to really take a look at their business and figure out what's working and what can be improved. Often, and you probably have this as well with your clients, especially with a small client, the first thing that they're doing is they're not tapping into what's often referred to as low-hanging fruit. So, and that's why I think you and I were talking so heavily on, newsletters or email newsletters, is because that's an easy way to stay in touch with past customers and prospects. The other thing that you need to remember is, especially with online marketing, is there's only one place online that you own, and that's your website. So you wouldn't build a home on a lot that you rent. So you don't want to build your entire online marketing presence on one of the social media platforms like Facebook or Pinterest or wherever it might be, because those things can change. So you want to really focus on your website as the hub of your online marketing and really look at it. Does it have the right pages? Is it formatted the right way? Does it express your story the way that you want it to? Websites 15 years ago were meant to, they were stood up and they were put up there and they went to work for your business, but that's not the case anymore. So you want to, constantly be looking at your website and seeing where you can tweak it, add to it, and that's why blogging is so effective. So the first thing I would look at is your website, because that is the only online real estate that you actually own. The second thing I would look at is start building your email list, and that can be done in a couple of different fashions, but you want to, again, you may have 1,000 Twitter followers or 500 Facebook followers, but you don't have their name and their email address. So Facebook can change their rules, Twitter can change the rules, or they could follow you, but they could just stop using Facebook. So you want to build that email list. That's really gold, and start collecting those people. And then once you're building that list, the third thing that I would do is develop a strategy for staying in touch with them on a regular basis, which is what we were talking about, the email newsletter.
Perfect.
Those would be the three. Yeah, those would be the three things that I would really I work through with all of my clients: is how's your website, where's your list, and then once we have those two things established, okay, so let's continue to stay in touch with that list.
Right, and then obviously to actually get into the nitty-gritty of doing it well, there's a ton of resources out there. So what are some great resources that people can go to really learn how to do this correctly, kind of get more of a handheld approach to it? If they can't afford, a consultant at this point, how can they self-educate and at least approach it in the right way?
Well, I hope my blog has a lot of really good information.
Yeah.
So, if you have the desire to build that yourself, obviously, I consult, Heather, you consult as well, and we can get someone on the right track, I would say, fairly quickly. Some of the other resources, if I don't want to self-promote myself, some of the other resources that I use on a regular basis, to be honest, is like Social Media Examiner to help build your list. If you're in the contracting world, I use Blogging Painters. And there's all kinds of forums out there as well. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I'll say Tess's website does have a lot of great content, and it's just tesswittler.com. There's no problem with you promoting that on here. Some of the other resources I know that I use, especially getting started, and some of these you have to really dig kind of far back because their content has changed a bit, but Copyblogger is definitely a great resource. They've got some amazing ebooks that are really just kind of walk you through step by step the process and what you need to do and help you set up goals and things like that. And all of their content is available for free, or at least all the content you would need to get started. And really even HubSpot. I'm not always the biggest fan of HubSpot because of some of their pricing structures and the way that they run their business, but they do have some really great content on the blog. If you dig back a couple of years back, there's some really great information, some great white papers that you can download, and so I'd say that those two are other great resources that are more generic. You're going to find information that's for a lot of different industries from those.
Yeah, but it all starts with your website. I would say if you didn't have a stellar year this year with generating leads online, there's also, besides myself, there's other people in the industry that will do a website review. Not very expensive to do that, depending upon how big your website is. And they can just basically, it's giving you feedback. It's like anything else. Your car needs a tune-up every once in a while. Your body needs fuel, if you're working out. And the same with your website. You just need to tune it up. And sometimes you're too close to your own website. You think something is there, or you think it's absolutely clear, and it really isn't. And so you need to hire someone like myself or Heather, or there's plenty of other people out there to kind of just look at your website and give you some suggestions to make changes to that. And then from there, everything else really starts working much easier, and you do start generating more leads, and you start attracting the right people too. And I would say that, but it all starts with the website, with just getting that as fine-tuned as you can, and then moving forward.
Awesome. Well, that is some great advice. We're running right up here to our 12:30 mark, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Was there anything else that you wanted to let us know about that's going on from your end, or any final words of advice before we finish up our call?
Well, I would just say that if you do have any questions with regards to content marketing, tweet me, Facebook me, email me, whatever. I am always happy to help people try to figure it out and put them in the right direction. And I know, Heather's, you feel the same way as well. It also gives me some really good information with regards to what your questions are and what your challenges are, so then I can, write blog articles or try to help other people like you. So I would say, if you do have any of those questions, just feel free to reach out to me, contact me, and I'm happy to put you in the right direction.
So, well, thank you so much again for your time. I think this was very educational, and I hope that people go out and start really taking ownership of their content. I know I'm one of my worst clients when it comes to that, and Tess and I have been working on that together a bit at the end of this year. And it's something that can always use improvement and moving forward. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about it today. Next week, we will be back on Tuesday again. We have some scheduling conflicts this month, but we'll be back here on Tuesday at noon Central, and we will have the procurement manager from DFW Airport joining us, and he will be talking about how small businesses can win contracts with large public entities. So whether you're a service business or you're a manufacturer, distributor, really any kind of business that would have an interest in doing business or winning contracts with those large public entities, this is going to be a great session where he's going to give you a lot of insight, some advice on how to get in the door, who to contact, and where you can really learn more about the process. So we will see you back next Tuesday at noon Central. Thanks for joining.